So, hello. I'm going to talk today about Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, which is an extremely popular film and real big blockbuster, although being 3 hours long and really complicated and not so naturally clear always for the ordinary person who doesn't have necessarily scientific education, historical education, philosophical, cinematically and otherwise, and maybe this film is no less complicated than Tenet, Nolan's last film. Um, but Nolan is highly attractive, and I think not for nothing, because his films are really heartful. It's not everyone agree about regarding this point, but I believe it is so, and also they have a kind of a big, lofty message for humanity, and also this immense drive, this cinematic explosion, which is on one hand overwhelming, on the other hand, it's it's kind of really amazing, and there are amazing parts in Oppenheimer. But although lots of this film is just about legal discussions and all sorts of technical legal issues and so on and so forth. Now, I think that I'm pretty good in clarifying lots of what this film is talking about. This is the first time that I'm doing this thing and uploading such a video to YouTube, and my English is not always precise because English is not a native language to me. So I don't always know when I'm using a concept in its right way, and even more when I'm maybe translating a word or a phrase from my native language into English, and I think this is the English way to say something, although it's not. It's just a free unconscious translation. So, but I hope that I'm gonna be clear enough, um, and I think I will be. And so I have some like 40 minutes now, and essentially I would give this 1 hour and 10 minutes or something like that, but I can't talk about everything. So what I'm going to do, I prepared myself, a sheet here with like points and all sorts of clarifying phrases, and I'm try to talk, to read and what I have in front of me, and elaborate. And I'll do my best to make it coherent and to cover most of what, the ideas that came up for me while watching the film, and the themes that are, and psychological and social structures that I was able to grasp or understand while watching it. Maybe I'll cover only, 1/3 of it, and in that case, I might, prepare another video. Let's see how this video goes and what the responses are, and yeah, see what follows. So now there's for me there's a motto for this film, which is there's a point in the film where Strauss is very angrily saying that something like, I don't remember the exact words, but how could this genius, talking about Oppenheimer, be so blind? And he says, being genius is no guarantee of wisdom, or for wisdom. The fact that you are a highly intelligent and creative person, it, it doesn't, it's not enough for you in order to be wise. And so I'll come back to this later on, but I think that the whole film is in a way talking or referring to this statement. Now, we know that the film opens up with a series of questions that Oppenheimer is being asked in the hearing, or security hearing, or committee, and we also know that the film is striving for historical accuracy. We know that now that Nolan was really careful into. I mean, it's a movie, but 80 years ago, or 70, or 100 different stages in the film, different historical periods. But Nolan was doing probably his best in order to align to what he presents, at least in terms of what people say, to what those people really said in history, the historical figures that are involved. And so then there are two different trials, and it's legal hearings or committees in the film. One is for Oppenheimer, and one later on is for Strauss, following the one that he arranged for Oppenheimer in order to take away from him his security certificate, or whatever you call it, and or the different approvals or papers that you need in order to sit in the nuclear power committee of the US. And now, when the film starts, they ask Oppenheimer whether he was happier during his studies in Europe than what he was in his life previous to that in the USA. And then we see a series of kind of associative, memories or recollection of his life as scenes of his life as a student in the 1920s, especially in Germany and Holland, and beginning in England. And the student, who is a physics student, naturally, he delves also into the works of T.S. Eliot and Picasso, Stravinsky, Freud, and Marx in his room, or in the cultural halls or museums and so on, and concert halls, and there's a kind of sense of this long poem by Eliot, this desolate wasteland, which is the kind of the cold and graceless human interests and internal and external, industrial and psychological waste that is being created in this kind of atmosphere of the modern world. And this is in a way an opening landscape for the film. But the modern world is obviously not just that. So Nolan also presents to us all sorts of signs for the intellectual and spiritual achievements of modernism, Cubism, new ways of harmony, which is containing disharmony and atonality, relativity, and multidimensional realities, psychoanalysis, and so on and so forth. Now, the old world is dead. And, Picasso, Nietzsche, Freud, Stravinsky, and so on, they kind of liberated the sexual energy or libido from the Puritanism of the Victorian era of the 19th century. And humanity now is kind of admitting, after World War One, that it has desire. Now, the 19th century was all about conquering the world in sake of, power, money, luxury, and so on. But it was kind of not admitted. And now everything is kind of more admitted, which is something which can easily lead to fascism. Because now we say, in a kind of a Nietzsche way, the will for power is a legitimate thing, which the Victorian era wasn't willing, to admit. So what we see in the beginning of the film is, and the young Oppenheimer is really strikingly confronting this. I think this is what Nolan tries to show us, is that humanity now, or at least the Western humanity, the more powerful part, contemporary powerful part of those days, is striving to destroy the old world, and sometimes very brutal ideas. Like, it was pretty common back then, the idea that we need to destroy everything in order to build something which is new and perfect. And I think also many communists believed in that. So humanity is getting, in a way, more and more brutal, and we'll see it in World War II, which is something which is going to move the Manhattan Project, or Trinity, the atomic bomb project. But humanity is also aspiring to reform the world, and nowadays we have a really big struggle right now between what we call now the progressives and the conservatives, and we see all the craziness around that. And so the humanity was never as progressed in will as it was back then. Maybe, but also the opposite, and so we also see the young Oppenheimer having visions of hidden universe. This is the way it is described later on by him, and he is in some state of some kinds of direct contact or observation, even maybe, of the totality of some, let's call it, cosmic forces. And Nolan presents us with a series of shocking and breathtaking, especially if you see it on the IMAX, psychedelic, so to speak, visions and images. And I think the Nolan is kind of, you need to read Nolan. Mostly, his messages are, he's so bombastic, Nolan, but when you want to understand him, you really need to read him into, underneath the surface. And here I think that if you read, down deep, he's talking with us about an experience that Oppenheimer has. Seeing, let's call it seeing, it's not exactly seeing maybe, although we see it on the cinema screen, different powers, I'll call it this way, which is on the one hand creation, love, and vitality, and then order and harmony, and then finally prey, or the predator power, and destruction and annihilation, or nothingness. And these forces, they seem to threaten or maybe even consume the still young soul or psychological infrastructure of the young student. And by the end of the film, even though Oppenheimer becomes a sort of person in his mind, or not necessarily the end of the film, but throughout the film, still person, still mind, and even institutionalized, the part of the system, but he's still struggling with these forces all his life, and there's a big question for him, which Nolan wants this question to, I think, to be also a question for us: how to give expression to these forces, which apparently Oppenheimer can't deny. Also, really being a genius of some sort or kind, maybe not Einstein, but and how to express them in the personal and family world or life, and also in the world of community and politics, national community, or his the friends who are around him, and so on. And in a way, the film, I think, says that it's the same thing, because the film is maybe the main theme of this film is hubris and ego, and I'll talk about it soon. And so Oppenheimer will make use of the principle and study of cosmic order, which is what you do in high science, in order to produce a bomb, that is actually a tool of destruction and not order, and so the force that is responsible for stabilizing what we call matter and human existence is for Oppenheimer something which can be used in order to create something that can destroy stability and human existence. And there's a sort of paradox here, and this paradox is in the heart, the heart of the film, all through the film, every scene, I believe. And so he talks about a three-headed God. This is what he calls the historical atomic bomb experiment. Later on in the film, I think Groves asked him what should be the name. This is what he says, and the official name is Trinity, as we know, which is similar to the word Trimurti, the force that collapses the three gods in the Hindu tradition, which is a part of the flesh of the film, and really Oppenheimer in his real interviews throughout his life, the real Oppenheimer, not Nolan's Oppenheimer, was talking about this Hindu tradition, which he knew a lot about. And his force is collapsing the three gods in the Hindu tradition into one form. Now, he says three-headed god, and the three gods in the Hindu tradition is Brahma, which is the creator of the world, Vishnu, which is a preserver of the world, and Krishna or Shiva, which is the destroyer. And I'll come back to this a bit later. This is going to be the first part. I'm probably going to do 3 or 4 parts. Number 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one, I don't know, something like half an hour or 25 minutes. This is the best way to go. This is what I'm realizing as I'm doing this video. Now, the young Oppenheimer experienced as an American Jew, both American and a Jew, in Europe as a student, and also as a young man who has unusual sensitivities. This is what we can see in the beginning of the film. He experiences humiliations, and these humiliations, they almost lead Oppenheimer into an extreme revenge, which if it works, Oppenheimer is not going to, lead the Manhattan Project. He's probably going to spend his life in jail. And we see that he's injecting cyanide into an apple, which is his lecturer apple. But Niels Bohr, who is the person who's eventually almost eating the same apple, and Niels Bohr was Einstein's famous colleague, he recognizes unique qualities in Oppenheimer, and this saves Oppenheimer. And Bohr talks to him about the snake that hides under the stone of science. And this is very important. Remember that while holding kind of the I don't know the term in English. The story from the Book of Genesis, the beginning of the Book of Genesis, like the second part, the third part. The fruits, from the tree of knowing bad and evil, I think it's called in English. And when we see that, we might reflect Adam and Eve, and Bohr already reminds us of the snake explicitly, and we might think about the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. And at another point in the film, Oppenheimer will say, when I was a child, I wanted to combine something like that. I don't remember the exact words, but the practice of physics and New Mexico, which he loved, to live a perfect life. And he would like to isolate himself together with Frank, his brother, in this farm in Los Alamos, and to live simple life in the vastness of the desert in some cabin, and also deal with science, but obviously impossible, and also impossible because the world is in danger. Liberalism and democracy are in danger, America is in danger, and the Jewish people are in danger, and we know that the honest reply which Oppenheimer will give maybe not in this point, but when they asked him, ask him whether he likes Europe better than America. Now, of course, we hear Oppenheimer in the film, and I think Oppenheimer's biography shows it pretty explicitly that Oppenheimer loves America. It's complicated for him, but he prefers America or the US, and more precisely over Europe. And 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 so confronting Stalin and Franco and Hitler, he can't just retire at an early age to the desert. He needs to be responsible for the world, because the world is in crisis and the house is on fire. But isn't Oppenheimer going to, add to this fire? And he goes to the desert anyway because he doesn't want. He has strong FOMO, fear of missing out. He's going to the desert anyway. So maybe, despite of all achievements of modernity, or not maybe, this is I'm moving to something with a slightly different topic, but I'll connect it to all the other things which I've just said soon enough. Maybe despite of all the achievements of modernity, Nolan shows us some of them, which I talked about, and also we can also add the technological and scientific achievements. We, as humanity, and also as single persons, we haven't really learned anything substantial since the days of the ancient world. Can it be? This is a question that Nolan asks us, I think. The transition from the old perception of the world into, quantum reality and perception, and looking into the mind and the unconscious, and Freud and brain science, which already started back then, cognition and behaviorism, beginning of behaviorism, and we still have this fundamental problem of hubris and the elusiveness of the ego, which are not really, I think Nolan tries to say to us, really touched and looked at clearly. And this is related to the Strauss quote that I talked about as a motto in the beginning of this video. And this is exactly the same problem that humanity faced 2,400 years ago and more in the age of Greek classical tragedies, Aeschylus and Sophocles and so on, and the immortal theme of this sin of pride and arrogance, and perhaps democracy and cultural and intellectual abundance, which the ancient Greeks had it too, and it didn't help them to overcome this hubris thing. And maybe it's the same thing now in Oppenheimer's time. And of course, Nolan is doing this film for us not just in order to show us some historical episode. Nolan is always interested in giving us good examples for what's going on right now, because we know those of us, who are sober enough that the world, as I said before, the world wasn't in fire, so to speak, back then. It's the same thing now. And also add the climate crisis, which is being moved by lots of greed and self-centeredness. I think. And, you know, in Interstellar, humanity is almost dying because of climate crisis. And last moment they save themselves and they escape, you know, space. And and uh, and so we have all this abundance, political, scientifically, culturally, also psychologically, but we still struggle with personal and national and international conflicts and crazy, unreasonable wars non-stop. And so as a part of this, the film deals with these tensions between the miraculous and the pure, which high physics, they deal a lot with that. You know, it's very, it's these sciences, they are amazing. And you know, it's dealing with secrets and all this curiosity and marvels that Einstein was always talking about, and to his students. And but the tension between the miraculous aspect of this and the political use of physics, especially in the field of war, and the complexity of this usage and the danger which is inherent to it. Because after eating from you know, the fruit of knowing, the tree of knowing bad and evil, or growing less young and becoming Oppenheimer, you know, a part of you know, the somewhat cynical society, not, you know, the naive child or Adam anymore. His the love for that farm in Los Alamos, New Mexico, is converted into, let's call it, a dark moral religious project, in which this Faust, Nolan doesn't use the word Faust, but I think that he means that. He calls it Prometheus. I hope that I'm expressing it correctly in English, but for me it's Faust Prometheus. And this Faust Prometheus is sacrificing his admiration for nature and the capacity of sacred penetration into the intimate secrets of nature and the sacredness of it, or the holiness of it. He sacrifices to the worship, these things, to the worship of the deity or goddess of the bomb. And this bomb will be dropped, at least first time, on this fastness, this holy fastness of the desert, which he loved so much. He loves New Mexico, and he's bombing New Mexico. So is Oppenheimer guided by a social mission, which is highly, highly moral, or by an inner reflection that he disguises, or inner motive, more precisely, that he disguises under this, as many people say about him, that he's phony, that he's Hippocratic. And I think it's both. And this, again, is what the film about. When I say this is what the film about, and I'm talking about other things, if you're attentive, all these things, various things that I'm saying this is what the film about, they're actually the same thing. If you look at it later and look into it later, and it's kind of similar to this in the beginning of the film, this Picasso painting that we see Oppenheimer observes in the museum in maybe it's in England, maybe it's in Paris. There's a double-faced woman or person. Okay, forget about women. Not necessarily a woman. And there's a part in which this paternal and loving, and it's not paternal, it's a father figure of General Groves, where he promotes, is being promoted into the role of general. Is Matt Damon I'm talking about, who will be, a future true friend to Oppenheimer, and the person who gives, puts this trust in Oppenheimer, makes him into the head, makes him the head of the Manhattan Project, the bomb project. He reports to Oppenheimer when he first meets him in the lab, or in the classroom in the university, that Oppenheimer is being described as an erotic, egotist, a communist, which we know he's not, but he's on the borderline. We know that. And I don't know what's the word in English, like someone who's, I don't remember how Groves called it, but someone who's after women all the time. And Oppenheimer doesn't deny that. But Groves also say that there are contradictory reports. And he looks like, he really looks at Oppenheimer in the eyes, and we can see that Groves sees in Oppenheimer all these problematic things, but also something which is really the opposite, something which is responsible, which is deeply emotional and empathetic, and serious, a serious human being. So there's fragmentation here. And again, fragmentation is the theme of the film. Again, talking about the Picasso, the painting, and so on, and the other things, and what Tross is saying about Oppenheimer. And there's a question here. And this question will develop into a monstrous dilemma in the film. And the question is, now, can a fragmentary and in a known sense chaotic and conflicted mind bring order to the world or in the world? If I am fragmented and the world is fragmented, can I be a factor of order in the world? I think that this question is really, really, really important to Nolan. Now I need to finish this recording, and this is 38 minutes. Forgive me for my English. I think it's not bad enough. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that it's starting giving you maybe some insights or things that you haven't thought about and kind of wanted to understand about the film, although I didn't really get, I'm still not connecting everything together. This will follow. I'll do 3 more videos or 2 more videos, and I'll, connect everything that I was talking about in this first video more and more, together, so it will be more and more comprehensive what I actually want to say and what I believe Nolan wants to say to us. So thank you for watching. I'm Raphael Daniel, and see you next time, hopefully soon.